Hello again, YouTube. I'm finding increasingly strange with this, in particular with your views to Sinus, because I know you keep stating that you're researched and you've talked to people, but I haven't actually seen any evidence. Did on the Alex Jones stuff, but ideally you've just looked on the internet and just got 6 or 7 sources, but that's not the issue. One of the problems I feel with arguing the pro-European Union debate is that simply have no arguments. You can point out what a massive democratic deficit will be produced by unifying political power within the European Union. You can point out that most of the EU does is rubbish. You know, the fact that the common agriculture policy, which I'm sure you're well read on, Sir Sinus, and the common fisheries policy, which you're obviously well read on, again, this has great impacts on agriculture, economy, and food production within individual states within the European Union. In England it's a very, very big contentious issue. So again, I ask you to look at that rather than just basing your opinions on the odd person you might have talked to on a message board. Look into the agricultural and fisheries policies. Okay, at the end of the day, it's a protectionist, corporatist system. Pro-European Union people will generally describe themselves as liberal, and then go on to defend like the Corn Laws, which is just a bit bizarre in my opinion. You know, federalism doesn't mean an end to wars at the end of the day. It doesn't. It's just a centralisation of power and a dumbing down of the masses, okay, under a blanket term. Again, that's a semantic term. The EU basically in England overrides our laws, our constitution. We don't have a written constitution in England, but one of the fundamental factors about British law is that no other law beyond British law is binding upon British law. There's nothing that can override British law, and the EU is always infringing on that. So why would we subscribe to something that over hundreds, thousands of years we have fought to sort of protect and maintain? At the end of the day, like your pro-European Union, it's very sort of anti-nostalgic, yeah, and I believe that, you know, nostalgia is really just a fear of death. But by banding together, we will be more powerful and more unified. I think the answer isn't to do that in a legislative fashion. It's just to do it in a metaphysical or social, mental, emotional fashion, where we embrace other nations. But I don't see how unifying legislation can reflect the pluralism that exists within the world, and by saying, yeah, no, well, we're all the same really. Well, we are, yeah, but then there's a lot of different factors which make us different, and I think that's a beautiful thing. You know, it's like polemic opposites. One is one thing because it's not another thing, which in a very loose, non-academic way, I put down to yin and yang, and I think it's important to have difference, because we're not all the same. But, you know, if you're going to shoot yourself in the foot with an argument, I really suggest you do your research. Look at Italy, with the influx of Romanian people coming in. I know numerous people in Bologna who all say the same thing about Romanian people. It's not a xenophobic thing, it's a statistic that there is a huge amount of crime from this sort of disintegration of borders. That's one problem in particular. Another thing is the agriculture and fisheries legislation imposed by the EU, and a lot of other binding laws which we don't have a democratic right to either support or not support at the end of the day. Man, I really do think this. You do talk very articulately, but I really don't think you have any sort of basis for any of the things that you say. In my idea, you're spouting a utopian view and using very slight historical references, focusing on semantics when people disagree with you. You don't actually address any of the issues. Okay, so here's some issues for you to look at: the agricultural laws, the fishery laws, and then have a look as a case study at Italy, and the problem with people coming into the company and actually the crime rates going up, and the people themselves becoming less secure with their own national identity and their own safety. So I'd love for you to deal with those issues, okay, rather than just using generalisations and history, which, to be quite honest, is not relevant. I do agree that we need to be unified, but I do not believe that the European Union is the way to go.